All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to Pain Points of CSMs and How to Solve Them, presented by Springboard Solutions and Strikedeck. Good day, everyone. I'm your host, Jeff Lowenstein from Strikedeck. I enjoy working with CSMs and customer success organizations every day to improve their entire customer experience. Give you a little bit of background about Strikedeck. It's the most powerful and comprehensive customer success solution on the market, enabling businesses to reduce churn, drive customer loyalty, and maximize revenue through innovative automation and integration technologies. Started by marketing automation pioneers, our proprietary SaaS solution empowers our customers to achieve successful results in retention, expansion, and advocacy with their customer base. A little bit about our presenter, Donna Weber. She is president of Springboard Solutions and principal of Kickstart Alliance, specializing in the post-sales customer journey. Donna helps software companies move beyond ad hoc customer enablement by providing scalable frameworks to onboard, engage, and educate customers. Front-loading customer relationships improves customer satisfaction and increases customer total lifetime value. Prior to beginning her consulting business in 2016, Donna worked at several startups where she built customer success and customer education programs and organizations from scratch. Colleagues know Donna as a leader who makes a difference. We also have Chris Lydon with us today. He's one of Strikedeck's very own customer success managers. He's here to offer his experience and expertise on CSM best practices and pain points. So I'm going to turn it over to Donna and Chris, and I'll just be here to help guide everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here, and Chris and I are going to dive into some customer success bad practices that might be giving you some pain points, and then we're going to look at how we can guide you to feeling better. So we're going to start with a couple polls to get a sense of who's on the call. All right, Jeff.
There we go. All right, it's launching on what is your role?
So first of all, we'd love to know what your role is. So we can help to focus this to you. And then the second one is, where are you located? We'd love to know where everyone's joining us from today.
So we're getting a lot of feedback here. Give it a couple more seconds. Great. Okay, I'll end the poll and I'll share the results.
Great. So we have mostly CSMs and then CS leaders, and then the majority is North America. Great. Well, welcome everybody. Okay, so moving on. So just a bit about myself. As Jeff was saying, I've been working in the customer success, customer enablement space for a long time. These are some of the companies I've been working with. I've had my own business, Springboard Solutions, for 3 years now. April's my anniversary. And last year I published my first book, Advisor Buddies, hopefully the first of many. And then when I'm not helping companies create customers for life, I'm out on the whitewater rivers of California and beyond. This is me spoofing the rapid troublemaker on the American River in California. All right, let's move on. And then Jeff, thank you for moderating the session today. And Chris is another panelist. He'll be sharing his customer success pain points and best practices from the trenches. All right, so we're going to dive into some pain points, and I'd love to know what you are finding is familiar. So first of all, does this look like you? Do you have steam coming out of your ears? I'm wondering how many coffees you might have had today, and are you even funding your local coffee shop? So why don't you type in the chat how many coffees you've had today? I'm a tea drinker, so I'm halfway through my first tea of the day. So we've had, one person's had 4, 2, 1, 2. Okay, that's a lot of coffee so far. 4. Oh my goodness, 1 extra large. All right. So a lot of coffee being consumed by the audience. Chris, how many cups of coffee have you had today?
Yeah, Donna, about just finished my second one so far. So
Second, okay.
2 is usually my limit.
Great. So, you know, when we're fueling customer success through coffee, we're going to get in trouble eventually. And we're wondering, how many roles are you filling as a CSM? Are you juggling a lot of balls? If you are, no wonder you're so tired and needing all that coffee. So you might be doing training, support, you might be a renewals rep. So let's find out from everyone on the call how many roles you are fulfilling. What are your responsibilities? So Jeff, if you can launch that next poll.
You got it.
And then while we're launching that, Chris, how many roles do you have right now as a CSM?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the day, but definitely from this poll, there are options. You know, I handle a bit of onboarding, training, support tickets, responses, things like that, and also just kind of facilitating between different teams. So, yeah, every day a little bit of everything. It makes the day go by fast, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. So make sure you select all of the responsibilities you have. Now, if you're in a startup, you know, the smaller your company is, or if you're in a startup team, usually you start off everyone are generalists, and as you mature, you become specialists. So let's see what.
Okay, I'll end the poll now, and we'll share the results. All righty.
All right, yeah, it looks like everyone's doing a lot of everything. We've got training. That's interesting. So training's the most. We got onboarding, support, renewal. So it looks like everyone is juggling a lot of balls and needing a lot of coffee. And then we also have some Coke Zeros. All right, well, let's move on. So here's the problem. So even though we're all talking about customer success, I still see companies bringing on new customers and not engaging them in a meaningful way. And so, you know, in the industry, we're all talking about customer success, but there's a lot of bad practices. And what it means is when we're bringing on new logos, not engaging them in a meaningful way, not onboarding them, then it leaves us with a leaky faucet or a tub with the water is, you know, without a plug and all the water's pulling out. So it's like pouring expensive champagne down the bathtub without a stopper, because we're not engaging customers. As CSMs, you're often in reactive heroics trying to save them. You're exhausted and churn is high. So if you can find how to raise your hand if this happens at your company or at a friend's company. Oh, I see a lot of hands coming up here. Is anyone's hand not raised? A lot of hands coming up. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here because it's going to show you how to move beyond this. So we're going to focus on 6 customer success bad practices. We're going to dive into these reactive CSMs, where customer success equals customer success managers, the last 90 days, ad hoc onboarding, churn analysis, and designing at the whiteboard. Okay, so we'll dive into the first 2, reactive CSMs and customer success equals the CSM. Now, the first bad practice is often a result of the second bad practice. When I first attended customer success conferences, I was dismayed because everyone just talked about the customer success manager role. And having been in a customer-facing customer enablement role for a long time, I was surprised that nobody was acknowledging all those customer-facing teams that already existed. Customer success managers were trying to do it all. And what's happened is that CSMs are being tasked to take care of the full, you know, care and feeding of customers and the full relationship. The problem is that this is not realistic, it's not reasonable, and it's not scalable. Raise your hand if you agree that it's not reasonable, realistic, or scalable for CSMs to be all of customer success. All right, see hands coming up. And so what happens also is that, you know, you're being tasked to do everything, and then when a customer churns, you're being scapegoated for losing the account. Chris, what have you seen in the industry with reactive CSMs?
Yeah, I mean, what I've learned from the industry being it so far, from kind of meetups and so forth, like you mentioned, I was kind of surprised by everyone wants to get to the automation side of it and, you know, be able to touch all your customers' accounts in meaningful ways. A problem with especially kind of startups and smaller companies is they kind of have to put so much on the plate of a CSM. And then, as you mentioned, that will just kind of to set them up for failure. They can only do so much, and they kind of just don't have enough time in the day or cups of coffee to, you know, get to every account that they need to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so how are you relying on heroics? At my previous company, we had quarterly awards for outstanding performance, yet they were usually for the folks who pulled all-nighters to save accounts. So what that meant was we were incentivizing teams to stay in heroics. The thing is, heroics feel good for a time. You get this great adrenaline rush, you get recognition, everyone cheers you, but that's not sustainable. Pretty soon you start feeling exhausted, and even those multiple cups of coffee aren't working anymore. So type yes in the chat if you or a friend are using heroics to save accounts. All right, so we're seeing some yeses. Now, when you use heroics to save accounts, it adds up to 2 to 3 times the customer license value. So it's also really expensive. At my last company, we would throw everyone at an account to save it in the last 90 days, and we would spend so much time and money and resources to save it. It wasn't necessarily even worth it because we weren't even bringing in enough money to account for all that cost. And the thing with heroics, you know, we focus a lot on customer churn, but when teams are relying on heroics, pretty soon you're going to have a problem with employee churn as well. Chris, do you have any experience with heroics?
Yeah, I mean, with previous companies, it doesn't even necessarily have to be in CS, but I mean, just the same practices with, you know, sales, things like that, where if you're kind of always, you know, waiting for the last 90 days or what have you, you probably haven't identified, you know, what the customer really needs to renew. It might be too little too late. And like you mentioned, you can kind of skate by on that practice for a short period of time. But yeah, you have to worry about employee churn, people burning out, and then certainly not scalable for where you want to go in the future.
Exactly. So let's look at the next set of bad practices. So the last 90 days in ad hoc onboarding. At my previous company, before I came in and built the Customer Success Manager program, the CSMs lived under the renewal reps. And so they were parachuted in those last 90 days to pull heroics to save accounts. But we didn't even know that those accounts needed any help for those last 90 days. And so guess what? You got to pull those heroics, which keeps you in the reactive mode. And then ad hoc onboarding. If you're focused on those last 90 days, you know, a lot of companies have CSMs, but they're really renewal reps. I've worked with companies where, hey, great, we have CSMs, but they were reaching out those last 90 days. There was no guiding customers in those first 90 days to success. So there's ad hoc or non-existent onboarding. All right, the thing with onboarding, poor onboarding is the main cause of churn. So when you add in poor customer service here, which in those first 90 days is part of onboarding, it reaches 52% of the reason why companies churn. And Service Source says that if a customer doesn't become loyal within the first 90 days, then there's typically only a 10% chance they ever will. So when you're focusing on those last 90 days, you're really always behind. You can't catch up. So when you're engaging in those last 90 days, when you are not onboarding your customers and not starting off with a good relationship, then you're using hope as a strategy. And you put all this energy into getting new customers, building an awesome relationship with them, building that pipeline, turning leads into prospects and prospects into customers. And then we use hope as a strategy. We hope that these new customers figure out how to use the product. We hope they are successful with it, even though we never define what success means for them. And then, of course, we hope they don't bother us too much. And we hope they don't log too many support tickets. And one company I work with, their CSMs would, you know, hey, great, you know, we'll do a kickoff meeting. All right, call me when you have a problem. And when I talked to their customers, they declared, you know, everyone was nice and helpful, but I don't want a problem. I don't want to get down that path in the first place. So we need to be guiding customers to success rather than using hope as a strategy. So type yes in the chat if you are using Hope as a strategy at your company or at a friend's company. All right, so we've got some hope going on. And hope is stressful, and that's going to lead to more CSM pain points. All right, so let's look at some more bad practices. There's churn analysis and designing at the whiteboard. So while companies are doing their best to understand why customers are leaving, it means that they're often staring at spreadsheets and then staring at whiteboards. So Chris, tell me about your experience with the churn analysis and staring at spreadsheets.
Yeah, so I've been to discussions kind of in, industry get-togethers and so forth, and a lot of times they're kind of looking at the wrong metrics for churn analysis, or they're really not fixing their immediate problem. They might need to, be more proactive with onboarding or whatever the case may be. So a lot of times it might be kind of how the CS is structured in the organization, where it doesn't really, go anywhere in terms of, spreadsheet after spreadsheet.
Thanks. So of course, churn analysis is important. And if you don't measure churn, your company could be in a death spiral and you may not even know it. But it's a bad practice when you pour over spreadsheets, trying to figure out why customers leave, meanwhile neglecting new customers. And then designing at the whiteboard, it's a term that's often used in Silicon Valley, where you pool teams together to design your new customer success programs and services, which is great. Maybe you just got back from a customer success meetup and you're excited to implement the great ideas you learned. However, building customer-facing programs without involving your customers is a bad practice. All right, so are you ready to feel better? Type yes in the chat if you want to feel better with some best practices. Great, so we're going to transform each of these bad practices into best practices. So we are going from reactive CSMs to proactive. Customer success is greater than the CSM. From the last 90 days to the first 90 days, from ad hoc onboarding to orchestrated onboarding, from churn analysis to green account analysis, and from designing at the whiteboard to listening to customers. And when you implement these customer success best practices, then you can cut down on your caffeine intake, breathe deeply again, and get a good night's sleep. So it's going to help you feel better, but also it's going to help your customers feel better. They'll be more successful. You'll look awesome, and it's going to make your company successful as well. So we'll start with proactive CSMs, and customer success is greater than the CSM. So the opposite of reactive is, of course, proactive. And the role of CSMs is to be a strategic and trusted advisor, not a gopher, not a trainer, not chasing after support tickets. Type yes if you agree. All right, we're getting some yeses there. However, you can only move into that proactive role when you're part of a customer-centric organization and all the customer-facing teams are playing their appropriate roles. So the CSM is not your job to pick up every instrument in the orchestra and play it. Instead, you're helping to provide that cohesive and harmonious experience for customers. Maybe you're the conductor of the orchestra rather than trying to play every instrument. Chris, I'd love to hear from you what it's like working in a customer-centric company.
Yeah, so I came from straight tech support, which, as you know, is super reactive. You're kind of just fixing the immediate problems. So the main enjoyment I got from kind of a customer-facing organization and getting into a CSM role is, like you mentioned, you're not playing every instrument, but you kind of need to know how every instrument is generally played. You're facilitating a lot with different departments, which I enjoy. You need to get, feedback from engineering or marketing back to a customer in a timely manner. So it's a lot about time management, about being proactive and, always providing best practices to a customer. Like you mentioned, not necessarily just, saying yes to everything that they ask for, because that'll set both of you guys up for success rather than, just simply reacting to them.
Great. Yeah, so it's important for everyone to know their swim lanes, stay in their swim lanes. It's important for the customer success manager to have that big picture and know all the different parts, but it doesn't mean you have to do every part. And in order to have that, you need to have that customer-centric organization where the customer is in the middle. So a lot of companies are kind of waving the customer success flag, but they don't have customer-centric organizations. And when you have a customer-centric organization, you know, customers receive a return on their investment, and then they renew, they expand, and they share their story with others. What does customer-centric look like? It means that sales are bringing in those customers who will be successful in the first place, not just closing a deal with anyone who crosses their path. You have strategic customer success managers. You have scalable customer education with some self-paced content so customers can really be enabled on the product in a scalable way. Of course, you have professional services. You have customer marketing. Customer marketing is just starting to become more popular, where the goal is not to sell to new customers, but to really get your existing customers to mature in the depth and breadth of using your product, and using customer marketing along the whole journey, aligned with all the different teams to reinforce the customer journey that you map. And of course, product needs to be designed around the business needs of customers, and support is there to help when customers get in some tangles. All right, orchestrated onboarding and the first 90 days, these go together. I have an orchestrated onboarding framework to really engage customers in those first 90 days. Why are those first 90 days so important? That's because you have 90 days to turn a new customer into a loyal user. That's where, you know, ServiceSource says that if customers don't become successful in those first 90 days, then that renewal likelihood drops dramatically. In addition, McKinsey says that onboarding customers is the most important part of the customer journey. And when are customers most excited about being successful with their product? In those first 90 days. So we want to garner that enthusiasm and help guide them to success. We need to front load the relationship rather than be chasing it. So here's an overview of my orchestrated onboarding framework, where you really very methodically map out what happens in those first 90 days. So we're not leaving anything to hope. We're really defining. We have in the pre-sales, we start setting expectations and having customers understand the value of the post-sales relationship, services, and offerings that are available. We have effective handoff to hand over the relationship. We have a very impactful kickoff meeting with success plans and quick wins. We onboard and implement the customer, and then we measure how it's all going with reviews. And reach out to me if you'd like to learn more about the orchestrated onboarding framework. The focus here is that we're guiding customers to success in a prescriptive, repeatable methodology. We're not leaving it to every CSM to figure out. We're designing a program to take every customer through. All right, next is green account analysis and listening to customers. So instead of staring at the back door that customers are slipping through, let's analyze our best customers. What are they doing well? What can we learn from them? And then synthesize that to share with all customers. Whenever I engage, whenever I work with companies, I always talk to their customers. And it's amazing what I learn from them. One company I recently talked to, the customers told me, we want to learn from other customers. We don't want to have to figure it all out on our own. So learning from other customers might mean, having, a webinar where your best accounts are sharing their best practices. Or it might mean you learning and sharing that with all of your customers so they don't have to each figure it out on their own. And in design thinking, the design thinking framework includes empathizing as the first stage of design thinking, because you cannot build services, programs, offerings for your audience unless you really know them and know their needs. So I always listen to customers. Rather than designing at the whiteboard, we listen to them, find out what they want to need, design a prototype, and share that prototype with the customers, and then fine tune it with them. So we're really making sure we're not just throwing customer success at them, that it's really having an impact. Chris, what's your experience from learning from your best customers?
Yeah, so I actually have I went on site to a customer the other week, and they kind of gave me an idea where they'll hold kind of, every 3-4 months, just kind of a meeting with their kind of best customers, so to speak. Basically just getting, proper feedback, points of view that, they're not thinking about internally, and getting feedback from like your green accounts, your kind of customers that are using the product most thoroughly. It gives you a great insight to, impacting your product roadmap in a way, but also just kind of gearing your product to, things that you might not have seen before outside of the box. So I think it's important to certainly get the NPS from all accounts, but really listening to your top customers seems to be the most rewarding.
Exactly. And the thing is, people said, one company I talked to, they're like, well, how do we listen to our customers? You can pick up the phone and talk to them. It's amazing what I learned from customers in 30 minutes. And our customers are smart, and they use a lot of products, not just yours. So one of the things I always ask customers is, tell me about an awesome onboarding experience you've had with one of the vendors you work with. They know what they want and need. They're working with customer success managers, with other companies, with other products. So let's learn from them what they think is awesome. Some companies might not want to be bothered all that much. Some companies want a lot more guidance. So find out what they want and need. It takes us, 15, 30 minutes. You can start learning a lot and really designing programs that have impact. This is the customer success bow tie. And the left side is the buyer journey, and the right side is the customer journey. Over the last 10 years, that buyer journey has come a long way with marketing automation tools, customer relationship management tools. Sales and marketing teams work in an aligned approach. They have frameworks, they have content, they have campaigns, and they have data-driven insights to really measure every step along the way to know what's working and to move customers through that pipeline. But then once the deal closes, I'm going to just try this little pointer here. But then when the deal closes, there's a gap. And oftentimes companies use hope as a strategy to onboard customers. However, this customer success bow tie shows that the other side is when we really onboard our customers, we retain them, we have them buy more, we expand into different organizations, and then they advocate for us and are great references, then we can really expand. So it's not just about bringing in new logos here. We need to take care of our existing customers to guide them through to better usage of our products to become more successful. And that's where true success and profitability comes for our companies. And when we do that in a very defined way, prescriptive way, then that also means more success for you so that you can breathe easily and you don't have to be so dependent on coffee to keep your customers successful. All right, so here's a review of the 6 best practices that we covered. Being a proactive, strategic, trusted advisor as a CSM. Customer success is greater than the CSM, focusing in those first 90 days, orchestrated onboarding, green account analysis, and listening to customers. Now, a lot of these, the bad practices are systemic. It's not something that you as a CSM can necessarily fix overnight. And a lot of these best practices are a result of a customer-centric organization. But I'd like you to pick one of these, look at one, and where can you start having an impact? Is there one thing you can do this week to make a difference? And you might not be able to change the whole culture of your organization to be customer-centric, but you can start saying, hey, let's talk to some of our best customers. I want to listen to customers. I'm going to pick up the phone and find out what's working and not working. I'm going to suggest that we reach out in those first 90 days. So I'd like you to type in the chat, what is one thing that you're going to focus on this week to start making a difference? And in order to reduce your pain, in order to reduce your reactivity and exhaustion, it takes some effort. But by building programs that are repeatable, prescriptive, then you're going to, in the long run, be able to breathe more easily. You're going to be able to sleep better, and you're going to be able to have a happier team and happier customers as a result. So we got folks who are interested in the first 90 days, doing green account analysis, orchestrated onboarding. Great. And you don't have to, you don't eat an elephant all at once. Just taking one bite, taking one step, and seeing where you can start to be proactive. Don't wait for others to make that happen. It's up to you. Okay, so it's our jobs to make customers successful and not hope. And when they're successful, we're successful as well. Chris, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just like you mentioned, for control what you can from a CSM's role, or even as an executive role. Some things are out of your control if it's at the system level, but yeah, just kind of focus in the immediates on being proactive. Picking up the phone, reaching out to those customers in the first 90 days, or ones that are just fine, just to get some feedback from them. But I think, like you mentioned, taking it one step at a time, just improving the little things can all add up to, overall better success for CS as a whole.
Great. So we've got plenty of time for Q&A. So please enter in your questions, and we can dive into anything you want to explore. Jeff, anything you want to add while we're waiting?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Donna, in my role, I'm, kind of an account executive role, but I can't stress as much. I mean, working with Chris and having Chris on our team as a CSM, he's such a valuable resource. I just can't stress enough that, getting structured and set up right, just like you're talking about, makes all the difference.
Thank you. Okay, so how do you encourage, we got a question here. How do you encourage your clients to have those meetings? Well, I'm going to go back to the orchestrated onboarding framework here. So a lot of companies say, well, we can't get our customers to engage. And what happens is oftentimes, there's that pre-sales, or maybe let me just go to this slide here. There's that pre-sales, and then suddenly, they're bombarded with requests they didn't know was coming. So I like to have companies start setting up expectations during the pre-sales here, so customers know what's going to happen and why, and especially getting those business sponsors and the stakeholders knowing that they need to be involved in some meetings here. The sales rep who's built this awesome relationship needs to set those expectations up front. And then during that customer handoff, you have that business sponsor or stakeholder. You need to have those folks who made the decision to buy your product involved to talk about their goals and objectives for buying your product. All right. Jeff, do you want to read questions, or shall I?
It's up to you. I can give you, there's a couple from the Q&A. I didn't know if you wanted to go from the chat or the Q&A.
Yeah, why don't you just pick a question and we'll.
All right. Can we talk about customer segmentation? I think that's a pretty.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just met with one of my clients today about customer segmentation. And so so there's this great orchestrated onboarding framework, and you could build this all in a very high touch, white glove approach. You can also build this as a low touch or even a tech touch automated approach. And generally companies start off, so you might be at a smaller startup company, and you start off treating all your customers the same. So you might have that higher touch white glove treatment. But as your company grows, it's not scalable to provide that really great relationship with every customer. So then you start segmenting. So you might have, your most important accounts or your largest enterprise accounts get that white glove high touch treatment. However, sometimes you need to look at your customers. You need to talk to them and understand what they need. Sometimes it's those smaller companies that really need higher touch because they don't have the internal resources to make your product successful. Sometimes those enterprise accounts have all the teams, they have full-fledged teams, so they can really make it successful. So you might have some premium packages or higher touch engagements to help those smaller companies really be successful, like an adjunct developer or consultant that's really making the difference. And then I often recommend building out this orchestrated onboarding program and piloting it with one segment. And once you know what's working, then you can, dial it down into a lower touch or tech touch treatment. So build it out first, high touch, prototype it with some customers, get their feedback, fine tune it, and then you can start adjusting it for other segments.
Here's one from Samantha. It says, what's a good way to determine which events in an application are the ones we need to track, the ones that make clients successful? I think it's an interesting one from my perspective, because I know doing a lot of the pre-sale stuff, that's usually one of the things that the clients want to do the most, is they want to do usage and tracking and all that. But I think it's a great question, because there's probably so many data points there that how do you boil it down to the best ones, I guess. So
Samantha, it sounds like you're asking for the customer health score or for designing what to include in an orchestrated onboarding program. Just want to get a little more input there. So for a customer, okay, on the onboarding side, well, so these are, I would say all of these are important for onboarding, and this is going to happen over 30, 60, 90 days. But the main thing is that listening to customers. So we don't just sit in a conference room and go, oh, I wonder what's going to have the most impact. Do you have data-driven insight so you can really measure what's happening? Can you look at some leading indicators? Do you have customer engagement measurements to see what's working? And then talk to customers, find out from them, hey, we just took you through the onboarding program. What worked for you? What would you change? What would you like to see improved? What works with other onboarding programs you've had with other vendors? So really having that relationship, often building this out and prototyping it with a small group, piloting it is a great way to start. So you're not just, you're spending 6 months building what you think is an awesome onboarding program, and then you throw it at customers and it doesn't stick.
Okay, we have another one from Andre. 2 questions, kind of similar. Where to start from in a business with enterprise customers with no CS process in place? And then kind of along the same lines, where are the quick wins to prove the value of CS?
Okay, so you don't have any customer success processes in place. Well, let's see. I would start by analyzing those green accounts. So let me find that slide. Oops. Analyzing those green accounts. So find out, what are some of your best customers doing? Maybe you don't know where to start. How do we design? How do we start engaging? Find out what those best companies are doing, what they're doing internally, and find out how your company is engaging with them, and see what you can learn from that. And there's no, so when I work with companies, I don't come in and say, oh, here's your checklist for what you do. I do an analysis to find out what's working and what's not working. And I do that by interviewing internal teams and interviewing customers. And I let the results and the findings show where we need to focus. So that's where you're going to learn. Where do we need to focus by finding out what's working? I'm going to be doing a customer journey mapping with a company focusing on the post-sales. And that's going to help reveal, like, what are some of the gaps? Oh, they've really been working on their onboarding. Awesome. What are some of the other gaps? And that's going to that discovery is going to help us to determine what needs to be done by who, where to focus.
Here's another one from Julie, and she's asking, what are some best practices in engaging the decision makers? Often the folks who are rolling out the system or championing it are not the decision makers, and we get that a lot. We get a lot of questions around that where,
Yeah, that's a hard one. And that's why during that pre-sales, really setting it up, having the sales rep make sure that that decision maker knows that they are going to be staying engaged, at least through this handoff and maybe through the kickoff. I like to, at the handoff here, schedule that review, which might be at the end of the quarter, where to get that business sponsor, get it on their calendar, keeping them engaged. So some of that needs to happen before the deal even closes. Those expectations need to be set. So the sales rep is working with those decision makers are letting them know what they need from them, keeping them accountable post-sales.
Okay. It's kind of along the same lines as this one says, we often struggle to get, this is from Anna. They struggle to get feedback from their clients unless they write in to complain.
Yeah, well, you know what? Sometimes we are training our customers to only complain, because what happens, we survey them. I'm not going to use any bad words, but we survey them to death. Then, you know, they give all this feedback, but we don't ever incorporate their suggestions for improvement, and we never close the feedback loop. So, you know, one company I talked to, their customer said to me, like, I'm so sick of giving feedback, I never see any results from it. So we teach our customers to stop giving us that feedback. So by when they give the positive feedback or the other feedback, we need to start showing them that their voice has an impact. And then also doing the listening to customers. So, you know, they might write in to complain, but have you reached out to listen to them and find out what's working for them and what they're really wanting? So it's really having that relationship. And when you build that relationship in the first 90 days, then you're going to have that throughout, versus waiting to the last 90 days, then they're already in trouble and they're annoyed and angry.
Great, Donna. We've got a bunch of great questions coming in. Here's one from Ankita. How to make sure the first 90 days, if onboarding is done by the sales team. So how do you make sure, I guess, like success in the first 90 days if the onboarding is done by the sales team? Maybe Ankita can expand on that maybe a little bit.
If the sales reps are doing onboarding, that raises a flag for me, because what are sales reps focused on? They're focused on the next deal. So they're looking at, they want to focus on that pre-sales. So that's where it might be time to separate out and having customer success managers be responsible for onboarding. More companies I'm seeing are having onboarding specialists, especially when the products are more technical to implement. So it might be time to separate that out. And I did see one question about, well, how do you get the sales and customer success teams to be aligned? And, you know, that's really important. You know, that's a critical part of being a customer-centric organization. And, you know, that's not something you can do. That's really dependent on the leadership at your company. They need to be driving that CS and sales are, you know, on the same team, whether they literally are or not. You know, there's a common saying that we're all in sales. Well, now we're all in customer success. You know, everyone needs to be in the customer success boat, because if not, then customers don't renew and then the company is not successful. And because of subscriptions, because of the subscription economy, you know, we're all in customer success, but that means we're all in sales, because we always need to be selling and engaging with those customers. So it needs to come from the top. I was at a customer success meetup where, you know, at the time I was at a company, frustrated because we were not customer centric. The bell would ring for the new logos, and, you know, the renewals, they were just kind of living in the shadows. Yet the majority of our revenue is coming from renewals. And I was asking, hey, you know, how can I, you know, get this to change? And there's a point where, like, if the organization is not customer centric, then it's up to you to decide if that's the best place for you to be, if you want to be proactive and strategic.
And that was Ankita responded. She said, "Yeah, their sales team does onboarding." So I think you gave the appropriate answer. Might be time to break that apart.
I want to answer Kim's question about CSMs delivering training, and they're doing this one-on-one training. So I see that happening all the time. CSMs rolling up their sleeves and, hey, welcome new customer. Let me show you. I'm going to give you a tour of the product, give you a walkthrough, and that might feel really nice. It might feel like a nice way to engage customers, but I do not recommend it. Customer education offerings are built to be repeatable and consistent. They are a one-to-many offering. And so it's really important, if you don't have customer training, then start finding, usually that one CSM who is building all their own training stuff, and it's really good. It's really important that those customers get something that is consistent and that is real training, not just information being thrown at them. And so that's going to keep CSMs as strategic. The thing when you do that one-on-one training, you might get that, first new set of users and you get them trained and everything looks good. But what happens when they leave? Are you going to come back and train every new set of users? What happens when they expand into new groups? What happens when your product changes? So you really need to start having specialists manage the training. I do not recommend the CSMs deliver training unless you're at a tiny startup, but that needs to be where one CSM is building something consistent and repeatable that everybody is delivering.
Great. And then if you see the question from Anna about, would you separate the onboarding specialist and the support team, or should they be one and the same?
So I don't like shoulds, because every company and every product and every set of customers are unique. So it's really about what works for you. However, onboarding is really about getting customers from A to B, moving them through those critical first 90 days where they're possibly implementing your product. You might need change management tools to help users adopt it and become successful, and measuring the impact along the way. Support is really troubleshooting and dealing with problems and resolution. So I do see those as something different. You might have, if you have a professional services organization with consultants, you might have some onboarding specialists come out of the services and consulting team. That I would say is a better fit, depending on how technical your product is.
Okay. And I know there was a question up here earlier, and I don't think I got to it. And it was a question more about customers in different time zones and how to, work with customers that have different time zones. Here it is. How do I get a response from clients? I message them based off their time zones and put phone calls above emails, but rarely have responses.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I'm going to go back to onboarding. When you have in the orchestrated onboarding framework, when you have that handoff and kickoff at the beginning, then you're really helping to define how you're going to work together. And it's important at the beginning to set up that customers are accountable too. And it depends how you're engaging with them. If it's a, hey, how's it going, email or call, well, I know I'm too busy for a how's it going. So making sure you're providing value when you reach out, and it's not just a how's it going. You've got some metrics, some guidance, some value that you're adding, but really defining, all of that up front so customers know that they need to be engaged. Other tools I've seen are in-app. There's some in-app ways to do chat. I've talked to companies that really love in-app chat as a way to connect.
Righty. There was a little more addition added on from Anna, which she was asking about separating onboarding from support team, and she said, "What would you say is the most successful client to consultant ratio?"
Yeah, those are things I don't like to.
Yeah,
I don't like to get
it's like that word "should," right?
Yeah, well, there's no specifics. It really depends on how long does it take to implement your product. What kind of resources do your customers have? So that would be something to explore further with internal teams and with customers. No worries, Anna.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, you're talking about the communication piece of it. Just an app I work with, I thought it was really cool. They send me, like a weekly update of kind of like activity, how much I've used their app and things like that. But then there was also some points about, some other things in their app or some things, that I could, upgrade to or whatever. And I thought that was a really cool way of kind of, simply communicating to me, but also giving me sort of something I could use as well.
Yeah, and it's touch.
Absolutely. You mean there wasn't someone at 4 a.m. back there typing an email? That, yeah, let's see if there's any. So that looks like it's majority of the questions, I guess. Oh, a new message here. Okay. It's
My pleasure.
Anchor.
Yeah, here's my contact
been...
info. So Donna@springboardin.com. You're welcome to reach out if you want to follow up with any questions. I'm happy to have a chat to help you take your customer success to the next level and get you out of those pain points.
Well, thank you, Donna, and thank you for a great webinar. And Chris, thank you for your information. It's always great to to get different perspectives. Just so the audience knows, we have this webinar recorded, so please reach out to get the link of the recording to share with your team or colleagues. You will be getting probably a follow-up email, so you'll see some of that information in there. And we just want to wish everybody to have a great day, and we wish you all the best in customer success.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Chris, for all your
Thank you, Donna.
input.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.